on today's show.
So how long does it actually take to write a book? It's a question that I get a lot. And I've now coached more than 1,000 authors and 16 National Book Award winners and finalists. And people oftentimes come to me saying, hey, I've always wanted to write a book. How long is it going to take? I've heard it's going to take a lifetime. What I'm going to tell you is that part of the real understanding about writing a book is understanding about focused writing versus just writing. And so part of the big secret that I will tell you that successful authors do is they do put forth a plan about how long it's going to take to write the book and how much time they're going to invest before they actually start the process. And we have an incredible person today, Gabby Bernstein, joining us, who's going to tell us about how she thinks about a book. And what's important to know is that Gabby Bernstein certainly is a well-known author, but she would probably describe herself as what we'd call an amateur writer. She does much more than just write. She has a company, she does consulting, she does speaking. And so professional writers are people that their only job is to write. That's what they do. So I would put Stephen King in that category. Stephen King is a writer. And so he gets up in the morning and his job is to write words and get those words out there. Whereas there's another set of writers today we call amateur writers. And Gabby at this point has 8, she's #1 New York Times bestseller and has 8 books, but still she would describe herself as not only a writer, she has much more. And so part of that is understanding how as a writer can you do these other things. And what you'll see here from what we learned today from Gabby Bernstein is that there's a process in place. And when she sits down to write a book, she has a set of time in mind about how long it's going to take her. Now, a couple important caveats before you listen to this. Number one, this assumes that you are the writer, not a ghostwriter, not having someone else do it, but this assumes you're the writer. Number two, this also assumes that there's process in here where you're going to be learning, discovering. So it's not like you have a bunch of stuff figured out and you sit down and write. But what you'll see here is that in general, there's a way to think about it that I find most authors do use when they think about how long it's going to take them to write this book.
So I would say the more routinized I am, the more fun I have, the easier it is. When I'm writing a book, I've written books in 4 months, I've written books in a year. The longest I've ever taken is a year. And this last few books I've done where it took a year. When I make the commitment to write, 70,000 words in a year, my books are not that long, by the way. They're like 50 to 70,000 words. They're not that long. But when I make that commitment, one of the things I do is I really commit to writing every day in some way. And that's not every single day, but most days. And I know my rituals. Like I know that I have a coffee when I write, and I know that I write first thing in the morning because that's when my brain is on. I know that I have to turn off all of my other systems and tell my team to back off. And and I also want to emphasize that I've been running a big business while I've written all these books.
Right.
I wrote half of my books on the airplane of the book tour of the previous book. So I would I would launch a book and that same week sell the next one. Wow. And go right into the process of writing the next one while I was on the plane going from city to city. So I've been, having to be very routinized and committed and dedicated because it's not like I went off to Bali and wrote a book, right? I've been living my life, working, being a mother, all the things that go along with life. And so and I want to say that because it really is emphasized you can have, a full-time job and still write a book. So that routine, knowing what my rituals are, and small right actions every day. If you sit down and you're like, I have to write my book this weekend, that's going to mess you up. So if you give yourself, an hour a day or 1,000 words a day, whatever you can get down, you're in good shape.
Yeah. And how do you books are these great things that you can kind of pull people into the journey with you, the stories and things like that. How do you find that you involve others in the process from story gathering to even the editings? What's that process of making the book? Because people think of this as isolated process, which it is in some senses, but there's also this ability to collaborate along the way. How have you done that?
Well, here's how I collaborate. I work with an editor who's always cleaning up behind me. 7 of my 9 books I did with the same editor. This past book I worked with a new editor, and that was really, really great. And so she will edit, like I said, clean up behind me, make suggestions. You want to move this should be in this chapter, that kind of stuff. And then once I'm finished with the manuscript with that editor, then my husband reads the book. And that's where the magic happens, because my husband's very, very, very bright. And he's a trained attorney, so he's always looking for problems. And so he'll go into the manuscript and just find all the problems and then push back. And I have to then rewrite and fact check and just get deeper into it. And that takes about a month with Zach. And once that's complete, that's when I'll send it to the publisher. And then the publisher does their edit. That's often the books I send are so clean that they'll just do a real swift line edit and then send it back. And then I have to go back in and collaborate with them. So the collaboration is really just with three entities. Right? It's like my editor, my husband, and the publishing company.
We all need a Zach, don't we?
Oh my God, everybody needs a Zach. Oh my God, you can't live without a Zach. But yeah, it's good to have that kind of person that's looking at the content saying, this doesn't make sense. Because once it's in your head, even your editor, it's like this big blob. It's hard to see through the forest. And so it's helpful to have that person.
There you have it. 8 award-winning books, best-selling books from Gabby Bernstein. And in her mind, she says to think about a year. And I think it's a great way to think about this process. And there's a couple things to know about why I recommend people think about the book as a 1-year process. The first thing is that writing a book is something that, like, hey, I'm going to write a book. It's something that could go on in perpetuity. So what I always recommend is you think about 2 key stages here, especially if you can. Number 1, give yourself a chunk of time to finish a first draft. And we oftentimes talk about in the book creators, a mediocre first draft. It's not going to be the finished perfect thing behind it. Most of the time, what I urge people to do is spend about 5 months finishing a mediocre first draft. And this is aimed at people who are amateur writers. This assumes that you are working full-time or in school full-time. Block off about 5 months behind it. And the way that I would tell you to think about that at a high level is, number 1, you want to spend about the first month doing mostly background work, research, note-taking, kind of putting stuff down. Whatever the style of book, there's this pre-work that goes on behind it. So about a month, spending multiple hours, probably 4 to 6 hours a week, actually just working on the organization and gathering phase. Then I encourage about a 2.5 month or 10-week just write phase. Putting on your calendar 4 to 6 hours a week and just writing words. Not worrying exactly how they fit or how it's going to come together, but just about 2.5 months of just writing time. At that point, you should hopefully have somewhere between 20,000, 30,000 words. Again, this may seem like a lot, but remember, if you're just writing words down every week for about 10 weeks, you're doing somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 words a week. You're going to wind up with somewhere between 20 and 30,000 words. Now, certainly more will be added along the way, but that's a really great place to start there, is having about 20 to 30,000 words. Then for the remaining 6 or 7 weeks, I encourage people to start to really turn those words into chapters and into structure behind it. By the end of this time, by about 5 months in, most people have a mediocre draft. And I always think about a first draft as having something that is, again, well structured, but not yet well written. A lot of the polished pieces behind it. So about 5 months is what I see for most normal authors that work with me. And again, what I would say is that sometimes people get to the end of it and they still just haven't quite got the structures down. And so I wouldn't sort of say, like, I'm going to spend another year on it. I would say chunk this off in chunks of time. I encourage that if you need more time after 5 months, to not say I'm going to keep working on it, but to say, let me see what I can accomplish in 8 weeks, in 8 weeks, and 8 weeks. So I recommend starting with a 4 to 5 month chunk at the beginning, and then add 2-month chunks on a time to sort of see where they could be behind it. And that really is designed to get you to a mediocre first draft manuscript. From there, most of the time what you'll see if you go through a pretty compressed publishing process, either indie press, hybrid press, or even kind of on the self-published side, most likely it's going to take you about another 6 months to go through the revision and the publishing process to get it out. So that's why I encourage people to think about their books as a year-long process. I'm going to start the book today, spend about a month figuring stuff out, work on my writing stuff, get some words down for 2 or 3 months. Then I'm going to kind of be polishing it to put it into a first draft, extend it in 2-month chunks if you need, and then plan for about a 6-month process from publishing, going revisions, pre-sales, all that sort of stuff to get it out. So think about a book as a 1-year project. And again, having those deadlines may feel fast, but at the end of the day, Parkinson's law tells us work expands to fill the time allotted. So set out a 1-year plan. I'm going to spend 5 or 6 months finishing a first draft and then figure out what the next steps are from there. But, and the wise words of Gabby Bernstein, just put forth a plan, commit for a year and see where you are, and you'll be surprised what you accomplish. So there's my advice. 6 months to finish a draft, 6 months to publish it. That's the way that most people can get it done these days. And if you need more time, don't give yourself time in perpetuity. Give yourself dates and deadlines. We need it. So if you are trying to get your time on your calendar, remember, 4 to 6 hours per week of amateur writer writing time every week over a year-long period is about the commitment I see behind it. Could be more, could be less, but that's a pretty good target behind it. Not every writer is going to be able to every week do it, but about that timeline. And then put deadlines down. When is this getting off your plate? When's it going to beta readers? When is it going to the next phase? And you'll be surprised what you accomplish. Remember, never write alone. Always find other people to involve in it, because that is the key. Writing is a lonely process. So don't do it alone, because that's the only way you'll finish. Have fun. Subscribe for more information. We'll keep sending out more great videos to hopefully help you finish and publish your awesome book. This is our peace sign. The universe has your back. Take a photo if you want here.